police in the morning.
Welcome, B-Movie fans, to this week's episode of B-Movie Chat. War, poverty, the environment, equality. These are all less important topics than what we are going to be talking about today, which is, of course, Batman. Batman is one of the oldest running comic books in history and arguably the most popular worldwide. The popularity of the Caped Crusader has spanned just about every form of media, from television, movies, video games, and even Legos. The story of Batman is one that is well known to anyone who hasn't been living under a rock since 1939. Young Bruce Wayne witnesses the murder of his parents and chooses to dedicate his life to fighting crime and saving the innocents, all while dressed up as a bat. Having been around for nearly 80 years, the character Batman has gone through several changes, some good, some bad, some a mix of both. So today we will be discussing Batman throughout the ages. Joining for today's discussion is Pat Evans, the creator of the upcoming documentary about the 1960s Batman television series, The Beat of the Bat. Pat, welcome to the show.
How's it going, buddy?
Oh, it's great. It's always fun to come up with a reason to talk about Batman, so I'm in a pretty good mood about that.
Yeah, like I said, I could talk about it all day long and be perfectly happy.
So your documentary is about the 1960s Batman series. Would you say that's your favorite era of Batman?
I tend not to play like favorites, like people always like to do the top 10 lists and things like that, but I like all of them for different reasons, and you can be in a different mood one day and prefer to watch a Nolan movie, or maybe you feel more like watching the Adam West show. There's just so many different versions of Batman to choose from. It was my first Batman though, so and you know who a guy named Michael Uzlan is by any chance?
That name sounds familiar, but I'm not quite sure who that is.
Right. Well, if it sounds familiar, it's probably because he's on the credits of every Batman film since the Tim Burton one. He was the main driving force to getting that movie made. It was his dream, to make a dark Batman movie that went back to its roots, and part of that was actually his negative response to the Batman TV show. He thought it was too, that wasn't his preferred version of Batman. So, he wanted to see more of the Dark Noir one. So he went on this 10-year quest to get that film made and he wrote a book called The Boy Who Loved Batman. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. It's great. And, he actually, part of his deal with getting the first Batman made is now he's been a producer on every single Batman film that's been released since then. So if you see him and his producing partner Benjamin Melniker, who was his mentor, you'll see their names pop up on everything from the animated films to all the live action releases.
Very cool. It's kind of one of the unsung heroes of Batman, I guess.
Oh yeah, he's a large part of what we have today is thanks to Michael. He was a game changer. Really nice guy too. Really, really, really smart and very generous with his time and to the fans, and just a really good guy. He's really interesting. He taught the very first college course on comic books, and it was a big thing. And if you you can look it up on YouTube. I won't ruin the story for you because the way he tells it is absolutely perfect, and it's one of the best stories you'll hear ever. But it's him telling the story of pitching the idea to his college, of teaching this course. See if you can find that on YouTube. I'll see if I can find a link and we can put it there for your listeners, because it is it's one of the greatest stories ever.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah. But the reason I brought him up really was to answer your question. He always says your favorite Batman is always your first Batman, because that's the one that made you love the characters.
Makes sense. Yeah, I grew up with the animated series and the Tim Burton films, but I honestly, I don't think I have. I'm like you. I don't think I have a favorite because I don't think Batman's really been done poorly, and that's one of the things that's amazing about him. Like, there's some like individual stories, like Batman wearing a rainbow bat suit, which is kind of weird, and Bat Cow, but
Right.
there are definitely some strange things. But as far as like the different like ages of Batman, I don't think there was a bad one. Like, I know some people who don't like the Silver Age of Batman, the one that your film's about with the 1960s series and things like that. But for what it was really good. I love the movie that about that series where Batman's got the bomb and he's running around with that. That scene's iconic now. Like, you see that reference almost everywhere.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And credit to that goes to the brilliant director of the Batman, the movie, Leslie H. Martinson, who just recently passed away last year. In fact, he was near 100 years old. And actually, a few years ago, I wrote him a letter and sent him like my DVD cover to sign, but wrote him a letter saying, it told him a story about how my mom had taken me on a Saturday to a matinee of Batman the movie when I was, like 5 or 6 years old, and how they used to give, they used to have those old school raffle style movie tickets way back when. This would have been in the 70s. So, before the matinee, they took the raffle tickets and they raffled off concessions. So I won this big, huge bucket of popcorn. I'd never won anything before in my life. I'm like 6 years old. I'm getting ready to watch the Batman movie, and I win this big thing of popcorn. It was just a really warm memory for me. And I just told him that story, and he signed my DVD cover and wrote back, thank you for asking. And it just, I was really glad I did it because, I think you should always take the time to thank people who make little differences like that in your life anyway, but it's sometimes the worst feeling is when you realize you should have reached out to somebody or something and thanked them and didn't get the chance, So I always prefer to do it if I have the opportunity. So and then postscript to that, very interesting. The Quentin Tarantino's got a revival theater here in LA called the New Beverly, where they show just only actual prints of films. They don't do digital, and they just did a matinee of Batman the movie a few weeks ago. This is crazy, and it was just such a memory rush for me because I go down there and it's a retro theater, so they have those same old school raffle style tickets, when that you get same as 1970. And I go into the theater, and they've got a dude in there dressed like Batman, and he's using those raffle tickets, and they were raffling things off to all the kids in the audience. So it was just like a time warp, a complete time warp, and it was mostly fathers and mothers, probably my age with their little kids now, and a lot of just adults too. And it was everybody, just the vibe in there was just amazing. Everybody was just laughing, and I was laughing and crying, and it was just so awesome to see see what I had experienced way back then, but times 100 now. It was really cool. I felt like it was a good omen for getting the crowdfunding and getting the movie rolling.
Definitely a good sign of things.
Yeah.
It's kind of amazing that at this point, I think, most people have grown up with Batman, so it's been around for so long, so everybody can kind of relate to it. And what I find interesting is everybody kind of has their own version of how Batman should be normally based on what they grew up with, but there really is no wrong way to tell Batman. I mean, even the cartoons, which were, they had the animated series, which is more serious, and then they had a couple years ago they had a series that went back to the Silver Age of Batman called Batman: The Brave and the Bold, and it
That
was
was
still
great.
good. Like, it was still
Oh,
really
yeah.
funny.
Yeah, yeah. That was people who really knew their stuff making that one,
Oh, yeah.
because there's some really, really deep references going on there too, and they nailed a good tone, and Diedrich Bader was amazing as Batman. All the vocal performances on that were just tremendous. The character design, like you said, was very like Silver Age Dick Sprangy sort of. It was they did it really well, and actually, the guy who did the music on there, is very 60s style. And actually, does he reference the Batman theme in that one? It's the guy who wrote it is a guy called Andy Sturmer, who was the lead. He was the lead singer and drummer in this band called Jellyfish from the 80s. I guess it was more 90s when they had like a couple minor hits, but they had like a cult following. Really great band. Very, very melodic pop, very Beatles influenced, but never got as popular as they probably should have. But anyway, Andy has kind of become a composer, and he wrote a couple of the Batman themes. He wrote The Brave and the Bold, which is that's a really great theme, and it's really very 60s vibe. And then he also wrote, previous to that, the previous animated series was called The Batman. Do you recall that one?
Vaguely. I didn't really watch too much of it. I watched mostly the animated series and the New Adventures of Batman and things like that
Right.
back from the 90s.
Right. So Andy wrote the theme there were two themes for it. The first one was written by The Edge from U2, the guitar player for U2. And it was kind of a little creepy, like just a little spooky guitar piece, which they replaced in either second or third season with Andy's theme, which was much more like upbeat and like kind of driving. I think they were kind of trying to change the tone a little bit of the show, and use the theme song as a way to kind of do that, transition it a little bit. But there's a little bit of the Neil Hefti Batman theme woven into his theme for the Batman. So I always find it interesting, it just keeps popping back up, the original Batman theme.
Definitely. Yeah, I kind of feel like Batman. I kind of feel like he needs to go through certain phases, like where there's more serious stuff and then there isn't. Like, I know Batman originally started out as a pretty dark comic. I know, well, obviously his parents were shot in front of him. The first appearance of Joker, he kills a bunch of people, and then it transitioned to the more lighthearted Silver Age, and then transitioned after that toward being a lot darker. You mentioned the one guy who pushed for that with all the movies and things like that, and there was also the comic book The Killing Joke, which really kind of defined the Joker's character, who is pretty much Batman's most crazed and in a lot of ways most ruthless villain, just because he kind of kills just to be chaotic. He thinks it's a joke, so it's very interesting how it goes from that. But then, like, when you get stuff like The Brave and the Bold, or even the Lego Movie, which I saw recently, it's really nice to see that, because it's nice to kind of be able to take a step back and be like, all right, this is still like, still has something for kids, despite how dark it may get. And I think that's really interesting. I think that Batman is, I guess, as a character in general, he's such a complex individual. Like, people have written psychology books about him. It's insane, but I think that having like so many incarnations like really helps make it so there's always something more to kind of get to know about Batman, and just in general. Like, there was, well, in not to spoil it too much, but in the Lego Batman movie, there's a scene where he's talking to Alfred, and he says, "Oh, what's wrong?" It's like when you went to this stage in 2016, 2015. He goes through all the different stages. It's like, yeah, there really is no defining Batman. Like, we all know Batman in general, but we don't really. I don't think anybody can lay claim to this is what Batman is, and I don't think it's that way with any other comic character, at least to the same extent.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. And yeah, the Lego Movie guys are another group that really knew what they were doing too, man. It was cram packed with everything, wasn't it? It was great. So yeah, and well, yeah, it's such a durable character, and it can survive so many different interpretations, and that's what's great about it. Like, there are no wrong answers, right? I mean, there's you said people have their own preferred versions, and certainly I guess I do too, but I mean, you can at least like appreciate all the other versions of it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think anybody's really been outwardly intentionally like disrespectful to the character or trying to make a bad Batman. Even Joel Schumacher was like, he had that apology about Batman and Robin. Hey guys, look, I really wasn't trying to make a bad movie. Yeah, I mean, he owned up to it. So tip of my hat to Joel.
Yeah, I think with that movie in particular, he was trying to combine the funny Batman with the more serious Batman, and up to that point, all the movies had been serious. So I think people growing up in the '90s, like, especially, they were just like, what is this? What's this weird, goofy Batman? Not knowing about the original, like the Silver Age Batman. But I don't think even for that he did a great job. But watching the film, like, it's not a good movie, but I can at least say I think I know what he was trying to do. So I can at least say, good try, I guess.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is what it is. But, without Batman and Robin, you don't get Batman Begins. You know what I'm saying? That's so it's true. Like, it's all, and a lot of it was merchandise driven too at that point. Like, it had just become a juggernaut franchise, and they were, they really wanted to, Batman Returns was so dark that, like, the McDonald's people were really upset. The kids were coming out of the movies crying, and then they've got McDonald's all over their French fry containers, or they've got Batman and the Penguin all over their French fry containers, and so they tried to lighten it up a little bit by having Schumacher. He made it brighter and lighter, and then he just kind of kept going off the rails. Taking that, just amping it up so much for Batman and Robin, because Batman Forever, it has its moments. The Two-Face was really kind of the worst part of that for me, because they really did miss the mark with the character, completely. So, but it has its moments. I think it caught the spirit of Batman really well sometimes, in the spirit of Bruce Wayne sometimes really well. And the original cut was much more interesting than what the end product was too. It like opened on Arkham Asylum, and Two-Face, they discover Two-Face's escaped, and he's like scrawled, "The Bat must die" on the wall, and there's lightning and thunder, it's very dramatic. And I guess at that point, their reasoning was, too scary for the kiddies or whatever. But the original cut of it was much more interesting. And yeah, there was a lot of neon and stuff, and definitely probably my least favorite Batmobile in that one too, I'd say. Not so much design. I don't know if you're familiar with H.R. Geiger. He did concept design for all that Aliens film, the original Aliens. Yeah, right. Like, brilliant. One of the most brilliant artists that ever lived on this planet, hands down. They actually approached him about designing a Batmobile for designing the Batmobile for Batman Forever, and it was a really cool design. Like, you could Google it and find pictures of it, but it kind of looked like a spider or an insect or something. It was really, I would have preferred it to the one they ultimately chose myself, because it was so like bizarre. It had a lot of personality. See, I don't mind when people do strange things that you've never seen before like that, because if they're committed to it, and that's like you could go along with it. At least you respect the fact that they weren't trying to just copy something, or at least they're original. You could say that.
Definitely. I just looked up the H.R. Geiger mobile. Yeah, that's weird looking. Like, it's got like these. I'm trying to figure out like its functionality, but it's definitely cool, and
it kind of a little bit of the element of the tumbler in there with the wheels, on the attachments on the front, kind of thing. You know what I mean? And I think the idea it could expand and contract somewhat too. There, like raise up or lower.
Makes sense. It kind of looks like the Christopher Nolan one was probably at least a little bit inspired by that. At least like when it turns into the motorcycle, you can kind of see like the central wheels in this one. That's pretty cool.
Could be.
But yeah, it's definitely like interesting how just how many incarnations of Batman there are. And well, we were talking about the 1960s version just being kind of silly and lighthearted. But then there are some that are really, really dark. Like I mentioned before, Alan Moore's Killing Joke, where the Joker he shoots Barbara Gordon, then cripples her, and possibly sexually assaulted her. And then like I recently read one called Death of the Family, where the Joker goes complete. Well, I can't say goes nuts, but he just decides he's going to torture Batman. He kidnaps everybody. He makes Batman think that he cut off their faces and stuff like that. He cuts off his own face. Like, this is really something. Like, but it's like, yeah, that's kind of. I guess it depends on who writes it, but you never know what you're gonna expect.
Yeah, well, that's the key right there. Scott Snyder, genius, so. And Capullo, the artist on that as well. Greg Capullo, amazing. Okay. The talent's all top notch in all the comics now. Like, I see some of the artwork and just like, wow, that you never would have thought when you were younger you'd be, it's really great to see the places that different people are willing to take Batman.
Definitely.
And not all of it's dark, like we said. A lot of people doing Little Gotham's a lot of fun, that kind of stuff, or Teen Titans. I like the kids stuff too.
Definitely, I think the perfect balance is probably the Batman the Animated Series, because that one definitely had some lighthearted and kind of goofy episodes, but there was some where it got kind of dark, especially for a kids show, and it never went too far because obviously they had. Especially when they were owned by Fox, they had a lot of restrictions, but there were definitely times where, like people would get killed, and it's like, wow, that was surprising, but yeah, definitely like a good balance between them.
Yeah, surprising a lot of gunfire on the show too, and if you go, they got away with quite a bit. You're right. You're absolutely right for quote kid show, especially when you consider like on the Super Friends cartoons, they couldn't show any of the heroes punching any of the villains.
Yeah, they did the same thing with the Spider-Man cartoon, where they'd have them throwing around villains, and it just looked like they were dancing like in midair. It was really kind of weird. Yeah,
they would have to find alternate, like have a boulder coming at Superman or something, and he smashes it with his X-ray or with his laser, heat vision, stuff like that. To have that was where the danger elements came from. They didn't have any like really actual like violence in them, but yeah, they really the animated series. yeah, those guys, another game changer. And they based the animation style and everything and the tone heavily off the Max Fleischer Superman cartoons, which, I mean, have you seen any of those by any chance?
I've seen those like yeah, I remember those like bit way back when. Those are good too. Like I enjoyed that.
Yeah, I mean, made in the '40s, and they hold up. They're really beautifully done, and if you watch them, you can 100% just see the influence it had on Batman the Animated Series. I mean, all those guys that worked on that, man, Bruce Timm, Paul Dini, just wow. Yeah, I mean, it's a tremendous achievement. And I think as far as the best overall version of Batman, yeah, I'd have to say that one it would be definitely in the top. I mean, they nailed so many things about it, but didn't dumb it down really,
Definitely.
But they were able to do some of the more fantastical elements, and of course the voice cast.
Yeah, Kevin Conroy is probably my favorite portrayal of Batman, just because his voice acting for Batman was just exactly what I pictured it as, like as a kid. I mean, I also grew up with that one, but I feel like even before that, that's what I thought Batman would sound like.
Right. Yeah, and Mark Hamill, of course, and Lauren Lester as Robin. He had so many amazing just guest villains too,
They even had Adam West in an episode. He played
Yeah.
a former actor who played a superhero. That was a nice shout out to him and all that.
Yeah, that's a tremendous episode, man. And that cartoon actually like had emotions in it, like an emotional, like you'd have an emotional response to an animated, that's an achievement, to be able to do that, and their decision to draw the backgrounds on black paper, rather than on white was a huge like stylistic thing too. It really gives it the whole distinctive look. Now you mentioned the new Batman Adventures too. What do you think of the character redesigns and stuff on that versus like the original run?
Oh, when you say the new adventures, do you mean the one from 1997 and 1999? Just called the New Adventures of Batman, or
right, the ones where it was the same universe, but they did just they tweaked the character designs to match it up more with the Superman series, so that they could like cross that whole universe together.
Yeah, I liked it. I didn't like some of the redesigns, like with the Joker. They gave him like his eyes are completely black. They just like his like iris, well, not iris, like the white parts of his eyes are completely black, and I just thought it was weird looking. And I mean, I didn't mind it, but it was such a weird like choice to make. And I mean, overall, I liked it. I thought the animation was cleaned up a bit, but
Yeah.
there were definitely choices with the redesigns I didn't like. I didn't really like how they redid Killer Croc, because after that point it became less of a goofy like numbskull into this like kind of hardcore like more killer type thing, and which I didn't mind, but it's like you kind of get used to one, and there's definitely like certain choices I didn't like with the redesigns, but overall I thought the show was really well written. It kind of kept the whole spirit of it, and I think at that point it started getting a lot darker. Like they showed more people getting killed. They showed a lot more just kind of emotional like scenes and things like that. Like I think that was the point where Nightwing was introduced, and they kind of showed the conflict between Batman and Robin, which I thought they did fantastically. So I definitely had problems with the redesigns, but overall, like they definitely kept the spirit of it, and I think that was very well done.
Yeah, I the redesign I enjoyed the most was definitely the Scarecrow.
Oh yeah, that was much better because he's so goofy in the original, and then you look at him
Yeah.
later, and it's like, wow, he's cool. Like,
Yeah, he was much more just kind of cartoony in the original run, but then they redesigned him to really look scary, and they got Jeffrey Combs from Reanimator to do the voice, which was like,
always good.
yeah, I mean, you can't go wrong with Jeffrey Combs. So I want to mention too the backgrounds being painted on being done on black for the original run of the series was Eric Radomski, and I don't think his name gets mentioned like enough in connection with the Batman the Animated Series, but it was like his design work that really laid the groundwork for a bulk of it. So good for you, Eric.
Definitely, what a brilliant idea to like just bring out like the dark style of Gotham City. Like that's absolute brilliance.
Yeah, and then again, you can really Michael Luzlon is a big factor in credit for that, because he, again, if not for him, we wouldn't get the Tim Burton movie, and then you wouldn't have got the animated series, and then so on and so forth,
Definitely.
or at least not in the form we know now.
Oh yeah. What's funny about like Batman that I think kind of beats every other superhero I can think of is he adapts so well to every time period, not just like his design and like the way that his character will change, but just like how he is and like what he does. He just kind of fits in because he's very complex. Like Superman kind of has had a lot of trouble adapting to modern audiences because he's overpowered and he's a goody two shoes for the most part. Whereas Batman, he's got like a whole bunch of psychological disorders. His villains do as well. Like they're all messed up in the head. That's why they all go to Arkham instead of a regular prison. And I think that no matter what time period you're in, there's still that like there's still certain themes that exist, like the wanting to make the world better, but also like the loneliness that he feels, the darkness, and just there's always a sense of like not really knowing exactly what to do, but like just going out and like I'm going to do what I think is right, and regardless of the time period. Like one of my favorite comics was Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns, because at that point Batman's considered a villain, but he's such a strong like character that he says, this is what I know as being right, and he goes about it even though he's being condemned like by most of society. And I think that just having such a strong character and like such a realistic character is very interesting. He's kind of like he's not an archetypal hero because he's got more depth to him, but he's kind of that hero that you'd like want to be, that's more that has all the complexities of a normal person, but still he does what's right in the end, and regardless of it. And there's a lot of the he's kind of like the Lone Ranger in a way, except much darker, I'd like to think.
Yeah. Elements of Zorro in there too. Certainly like the Shadow and things like that. But yeah, he has, and I think that's, you touched on it there, what his moral code is kind of what like a lot of people respond to in the character like now, I mean, he wasn't immediately formed that way, a lot of the elements that we think of today about Batman, developed, the origin story is always the same, which is like the most heartbreaking thing ever, right? Like who couldn't, understand somebody's drive to want to punish people for seeing that, and then, he he takes that drive and does it. I mean, he's a real guy, but he's a hero, like, so that's why like everybody can't be from Krypton, but maybe if you were a billionaire, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
enough. I mean, obviously, it's not happening, but it's the maybe of it. It's like you could, it's possible, you know what I mean? And that kind of gives you something to like strive to, like, it gives you a sense of hope built into the character, maybe.
Yeah, definitely. I could see that. I think like one of the things with Batman is he faces defeat a lot. Like he normally gets away and he'll defeat the enemy, but there are times where he'll really be torn over what happened. Like maybe somebody he was fighting died accidentally, or I know the second Robin, Jason Todd, was killed by the Joker. And he had a big falling out with Dick Grayson, the first one, and there's a lot of stuff that goes on that's really you see that he takes it very personally, but like he won't show it on the surface. And that's one thing I think things is most complicated about him is he doesn't have all the answers. He's not a perfect guy like Superman. He doesn't have any superpowers like any of the others. So whenever something happens, this is a real person like facing that, and you see that in like almost. Well, I think you see that in every incarnation of him, but especially like the darker ones. Like this is a guy really being affected by what's going on, and you really see him as being limited, but basically being at the epitome of what we could be as realistic human beings, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's where the Nolan films were interesting, because they actually showed like the events that led him and the thought processes that led him to some of the iconic Batman things we know, like who he trained with, how he learned to do all these things, where he got his equipment from and so forth, which that was something we'd never seen before. So that was cool. Certainly they definitely, when they picked their source material from the comics and developing their universe, they really picked from some good sources, you know what I mean?
Definitely.
Put together a nice little, I thought they did a really great job. I thought overall, live action wise, that one probably got the most things right about Batman,
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, kind of like we were saying, everybody has their own idea of what Batman is, but I think overall, in the overwhelming number of fans sort of have generally the same idea of the character of Batman. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. He's got like certain elements.
Our collective fan mind has built this version of Batman, But
definitely. I think one of the things about Batman that's so memorable is the fact that he's got so many villains that are so interesting. Like, I can't think of another superhero that has so many villains that you remember better than half the superheroes around there. Like, I mean, you look at Superman, he's got, Lex Luthor and, I don't know, Doomsday, and you got like, other characters have their villains, but you have Batman, he's got the Joker, he's got the Riddler, he's got Two-Face, he's got Poison Ivy, he's got the Penguin. Like, these are all characters that you remember forever, and it's interesting when you see them because they're all mentally ill in their own way. They're all kind of reflections of Batman in a way. Like the Joker kind of reflects his inner insanity. Penguin kind of reflects like his being, he's a rich guy, kind of like Bruce Wayne, and like how that could go wrong. And they're all kind of different sides of him. And it's incredible how like so many villains in it all kind of have their own stories, and they're all so interesting. And I think that's one of the things about the story in general is it's a story about not just Batman. Batman's the center of it, but it's a story about all these different characters in Gotham City. Like, whenever I think of The Dark Knight, I always tell people it's not a movie so much about Batman. It's a story about Gotham City. It's about different aspects of the city, the politics, and Batman's role in it, and just how everything comes together. And this guy who's trying to take it apart, and this guy who's trying to keep it together. And it's just it's such an amazing world that has been created and just like has evolved over time. And I really can't think of many other comics, especially, well, I don't think there's any other comic that's run as long as Batman, but any that's really as in depth. Like, I love a bunch of, there are a bunch of comic series I love. Like, I love Neil Gaiman's Sandman. I love basically anything by Alan Moore. But as far as one that just has gone on for so long, Batman is, like, at least in my opinion, unrivaled.
Yeah, it has definitely a rich history, and like you said, the best rogues gallery ever. For a comic. I mean, I think even Marvel fans will concede that, for the most part, or
Pretty
Superman fans or anybody else would be like, yeah, well, I mean, because you've got the Joker, right? So they're already, you're like, you'd be hard pressed to find anybody who wouldn't probably consider him just the greatest comic book villain ever. I mean, scary psychotic clown. And what's interesting too, it adds to the psychological component and layers of Batman and all the stuff you're describing. The villains are almost all could be like little fractured parts of Batman's own mind, like they so it all starts playing off each other. And there's a really good podcast that delves, she's an actual psychiatrist, and she does, analysis of the episodes of, the Batman, the animated series.
That sounds awesome. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
What's that one called anyways?
Protocol for like talking about other podcasts on somebody's podcast, but I mean, I figure it's all Batman. It's all good, and it's really. I'm sorry, I can't remember off the top of my head. I just have so much Batman music stuff floating around in my head right now that I'm like literally. My brain power is on reserve. You know what I mean? Called the Arkham Sessions. That's right. Yeah. Dr. Andrea Letamendi and Brian Ward, and it's really good. It's really, really fun. I would definitely recommend it. And like you mentioned, there is a book as well about the psychology of Batman. Travis Langley, Dr. Travis Langley. He's written a book about the psychology of Batman. So, it's I mean, it's man, all those elements just combined. It's a perfect storm of a character, Like, I mean, so many great things about Batman, so many different levels you can enjoy him on, so many different versions of him, I mean, and, it's all good.
Yeah. And like you were saying, like, even the most diehard Marvel fans love Batman. I'm yet to meet a single person who doesn't like Batman. I'm just going to assume they were somehow living under a rock and never heard of Batman, because I don't even think it's possible. There's literally something for everyone, no matter what your tastes are. I can't think of that, like, anybody, unless somebody's like really against violence to an unhealthy level. But like then well, they've got issues to work out on themselves. But like, yeah, I think that I really don't think there's anyone that I don't think there's anyone out there who doesn't like Batman, unless they're lying. And well, that's the only explanation I can come up with.
Yeah. I mean, it's. What's not to like, in my opinion. But I mean, it's, I think, and again, it's just because so many great versions have come out thanks to so many of all these creative people that have been in charge of him in different ways over the years. They've all loved the character, respected the character, and brought their genius to the character. And thank goodness, for all those lovely artists and creators.
Definitely. Yeah. The one thing I have to say is, as far as the Joker goes, I was having this conversation with my wife yesterday. I don't think there's been, well, save for the fact that I haven't seen Suicide Squad, so I have no idea how Jared Leto is for that. I've heard a lot of mixed things, but I don't think there's been, at least in my opinion, a bad portrayal of the Joker in anything I've seen. Like, I think Mark Hamill's portrayal is my favorite, but I think every actor did really well with the particular Joker they were portraying. And kind of like with Batman, I think Adam West was the perfect Batman for the 1960s, but in any other time period, it probably wouldn't have worked. Whereas I think any other person who portrayed Batman wouldn't have worked with the 1960s one. So I definitely think that there's been good casting. There's been a few Batmans I didn't particularly like, but I think overall, I think that the creators of like each movie and each series, they know what they're doing, and they definitely know like what they're looking for as far as Batman goes.
Yeah, absolutely. Like them or not, what you see in all the like live action films is mainly the director's like interpretation of his idea of Batman. Like I may not agree with how Zack Snyder sees Batman, but that's his, that's what he sees. So that's, how he chose to bring him to life, I'll give Clooney a pass even because like he's very like self-effacing about it, and he gets it, like, and he has a sense of humor about it. And so God love George Clooney. And even Schumacher, he's like, he admits, he copped to like, he apologized to the fans, for like, if he disappointed them, which I give him points for, but also, he like owned up to the fact that like they were trying to sell toys in the movie. He was like, yeah, I was an adult. I was in the room. That's what so I give him a pass too, but yeah, it's a big character, and Burton really took, although, we'd already seen the darker versions in the comic book form, for Frank Miller, Dark Knight Returns and Year One. It was still a pretty big, like, gamble to, like, for Burton, he had a really, he and Michael Uslan worked together beautifully to bring a very unique version of Gotham, to life. And then, as you very correctly said, like Gotham is like the main character in any Batman film, really, in a sense, because it's just so, that's what bred Batman. That's what breeds the rogues gallery and everything else. It's the city is a living character, or should be.
Pretty much, yeah. Now, who would you say is your favorite Batman villain, if you had to pick one? It's kind of a hard choice, but like if you had to pick one, like who would you say is your favorite?
Yeah, it's Yeah, like I said, normally I don't like pick like, but I guess if like I were forced, I guess the Joker, but but he has so many great ones too, I always like to mention a sort of semi-obscure character created by the great Norm Brayfogle, who was like my main Batman artist when I was collecting in the 80s. Sadly, can't draw anymore. He had a stroke a couple of years ago and can't draw anymore. So That's kind of a bummer for him. But he was amazing, a really amazing artist, and he created a character called the Rat Catcher that I really love. It's one of my favorite villains. I want somebody to like do like a really great animated Rat Catcher story or work him into one of the live action movies, you know. Like, yeah, he's not the Joker, but you could do a lot of really cool things with him, you know. Anarchy too, also created by by Norm Breyfogle, is another great kind of underused character. Did you see any of the Beware the Batman cartoon that was recently on by any chance?
I never got around to seeing that one. The animation was different, but it looked kind of interesting. Definitely want to check that out at some point.
Yeah, I really liked it, and towards the end, it only ran for like a season, and they just abruptly axed it, which was really a shame because there was a lot of good things happening in it, you know. By the end of the season, it was really starting to gel, and they were bringing Two-Face in. Christopher McDonald was playing Two-Face, but I was like, oh man, that's a really bummer. It had a really cool theme song too, and like the animation, it was different, but you know, I liked it. You know, it took a little getting used to, like you said, especially if you're familiar with like the animated series and stuff like that. But I wish people hadn't gotten written off quite so quickly, because they had Anarchy was one of the main villains, and Wallace Langham, who's a character actor, you'd recognize him if you saw him, was the voice, and he did a tremendous job. And Anthony Ruvivar, who did Batman, was great. Different, but totally legit version of Batman in that. What's her name? She does Catwoman in Grey Delisle, did Magpie, which was another kind of... They had a few more obscure villains on there, like Professor Pig, and Toad, which was different. And Kurtwood Smith was Commissioner Gordon. I mean, they had so many things going for it, and I just don't think they gave it enough time to develop, man.
That's always a shame when that happens. I wonder if like people just didn't like the animation, because like you were saying, like it seems like a lot of times people just don't like a different like animation style, but it's like it's not bad, it's just kind of different. And I don't know, like sometimes they'll do that with like video games, like they'll change up the style of something and people will complain about it. I'm like, it's not bad, it's actually really good, but it's just not what people were expecting. And I think sometimes the expectations can make the difference.
Yeah. And they did something different too with Alfred in that one too, where they made him like a former MI6 agent, and J.B. Blanc, who was another fine voice actor, really great guy, played Alfred, and I liked it. I thought that they and Sumali Montoya played Katana, excuse me, I need some water. So she was sort of like Bruce Wayne's bodyguard and eventually like Batman's ally, which was, I thought, cool new. See, I don't mind giving it a chance when people try and take things in new directions like that. I think in this case it probably was something related. If I had to guess, it would be something related to it wasn't selling enough toys or something along those lines, you know, and it just...
Yeah, unfortunately, there's always that business angle to everything. So even if something's good, if it's not profitable to the industry, then they'll have to cut it eventually. It's a shame, but that's fortunately how it goes.
Yeah, it must have been hard. I don't think they sold a whole lot of toys to the little kids for like Batman v Superman, because that was I wouldn't let my kid watch it really until he was older. I don't think it was.
Yeah, definitely not. Oh, man. So, any last words about the Batman that you'd like to say? You know a lot about this stuff, so like any like parting trivia or anything you'd like to leave us on?
Um, I would like to thank Bill Finger, who's finally getting some credit after 80 odd years of Bob Kane taking sole credit for creating Batman. Is finally being publicly acknowledged, what all the comic book insiders have known for years. And, you know, a really great guy named Mark Tyler Nobleman researched Bill and did a phenomenal job. I mean, the service he's done for the history of Batman, you know, can't be overestimated in my opinion. He wrote a book called Bill the Boy Wonder, and it's like a kid's book, you know, in the form of a kid's book, but it tells the story of Bill Finger, who helped shape Batman with Bob Kane, and it's a must read. And Batman v Superman was actually the first film where Bill was finally credited as one of the creators of Batman, and I hope to see it like across the board from now on, because if you read anything about the subject, you'll understand the story. But yeah, Bill Finger, glad to see him finally getting credit.
Definitely. Yeah, I heard about that recently, and what a sad story. Like he died not getting really any recognition for making the most iconic the most iconic comic character in history. Like, man, but I'm glad he's finally getting what like you said, he's getting what he deserves, and it's nice. I think that he'll probably be mentioned in every re-release of any movie or all subsequent movies, because the guy really he deserves a lot more credit than he got, and I'm glad that people are finally starting to realize that.
Yeah, and that's not to take away Bob Kane's contribution or say, you know, some of the things that happened to Bill weren't, you know, Bill's own fault, but he's never gotten any kind of, you know, public, you know, in fact, Bob Kane went out of his way to like discredit him, you know, publicly. So it's kind of like, it's a really great Batman story because it's like, to me, Batman represents justice, and in this case, you know, it's justice for Bill Finger, you know. And that, with my documentary, that's the same thing I hope to achieve, that kind of a thing where, you know, I can finally properly tell an untold chapter in Batman history, you know. And if I can leave this world having made that kind of positive contribution to the history of Batman, I'm a happy guy.
Definitely. So before we go, we have an interview about your documentary, but would you like to just briefly discuss it for anyone listening to the chat to kind of listen to and learn about?
Yeah, I mean, in a nutshell, it is the untold story of the music of the Adam West Batman TV series. Neil Hefti wrote the theme, Nelson Riddle did the series music in seasons 1 and 2, and Billy May did the series music for season 3 and wrote the Batgirl theme. And it tells the story of how they created the music, biographical information about guys from people that played with them and knew them, and we go into, like I said, different versions of the theme song, talk about the Batusi, you know, the different actual musicians who were on the show, the cast members that released their own versions of it, you know, the infinite number of covers of the Batman theme there are. A lot of crazy, fun stuff. And we need you to help support us on Kickstarter right now, everybody. If you're a Batman fan, please chip in $1, $5, whatever. We got some really cool perks. I'm going to be giving away a lot of, as perks, a lot of my personal collection of like signed Batman stuff and props that I've made. I'm going to be putting up a replica Batzuka in a couple days here for as a reward that I made from the actual toy, which was called a Mattel Sonic Blaster. That the show it was released about the time of the show. So back then they didn't have the time or the budget necessarily to make all these props from scratch. So they go down to the toy store, they buy this, toy bazooka, and then they jazz it up with Batman stuff on it. So this is, I don't know, I hope you have time for this because I want to tell this really quick.
Yeah,
The Mattel Sonic Blaster is what it was a toy bazooka, and it had this pump on the top, and you pump this bladder up inside it, and then you pull the trigger, and it would just make this deafening, loud noise, right? And I don't know who the genius was. Like, I can't believe they didn't figure this out before they released it, but like, how long was it going to be before some kid put it up to some other kid's ear and just blew his eardrum out the other side of his head, So they got pulled pretty quickly, but so if you want to buy one now off of eBay, they're like $500, if you find one like in a package, stuff like that. So, but strangely, and you can find this video on YouTube, it was the TV, it was Kurt Russell's acting debut was as the little kid holding the Sonic Blaster in the Sonic Blaster TV commercial. So that's just a strange little aside to all this. But anyway, I got an actual Sonic Blaster toy, and I made it into, I replicated a Bat-Zooka out of it. Really cool prop, and so that'll be one of the rewards that's coming up. So it's the Beat of the Bat, or it's beatofthebat.com is the Kickstarter page if you want to go there, and at the Beat of the Bat on Facebook and Twitter, at the Beat of the Bat.
Sounds cool, definitely. And thank you for joining. This has been a fun chat. Always fun to talk about Batman without exception. And yeah, check out The Beat of the Bat, a documentary by Pat Evans. And that's it for this episode of B-Movie Chat. Until next time, B-Movie fans, be brave, be alive, and be back next time.
Jag råmar ner. Varför ser du?